Tonight on Reporting Scotland, the first arrest under legislation creating protest buffer zones around abortion clinics. A 74-year-old woman has been charged. It comes after the US Vice President was accused of spreading misinformation about the law last week. Also on tonight's programme, the Health Secretary insists the law is clear on the use of single-sex spaces in a row around an NHS Fife employment tribunal. Luke Mitchell, who stabbed his 14-year-old girlfriend Jodie Jones to death in Midlothian in 2003, fails in his legal challenge over a decision to keep him in prison.
In the sport, after an agonising exit from the Champions League, Celtic and their fans return home from Germany beaten but full of pride. And bringing high-end Hollywood to Dundee, we get a tour around the multi-million-pound virtual production studio opening in the city. Hello, I'm Laura Miller. Welcome to Wednesday's programme. A 74-year-old woman has become the first person in Scotland to be arrested under a law establishing so-called buffer zones outside abortion clinics. The arrest was made this afternoon near to the Queen Elizabeth University Hospital in Glasgow. The legislation, introduced last year, prevents any protests or vigils taking place within 200 metres of facilities offering abortion services. Our correspondent David Wallace-Lockhart reports.
Well, we now have buffer zones in Scotland around clinics offering abortions, and the aim behind that legislation is to prevent protests or vigils taking place in the vicinity of these clinics. 200 metres is the distance that MSPs decided on. Now, this spot outside Queen Elizabeth University Hospital in Glasgow has been somewhere in the past that people have come to hold placards, and today a 74-year-old woman who had a sign that read "Coercion is a crime, here to talk only if you want," was arrested under that buffer zone legislation. That's the first such arrest in Scotland. She's now been charged and a report will be sent to the Procurator Fiscal. This is legislation that just last week the US Vice President J.D. Vance took aim at. He incorrectly claimed that people had been sent letters warning them that they could face prosecution for praying in their own homes. That's not something that's in this legislation. The law does say that people should not intentionally or recklessly influence the decision of someone trying to access abortion facilities, prevent or impede someone trying to access those services, or cause harassment, alarm or distress to someone trying to access them.
David Wallace-Lockhart reporting. The Health Secretary has insisted that the law relating to the use of single-sex spaces is clear. Neil Gray said it was for public bodies to ensure the guidance was implemented. His remarks come amidst an ongoing row about an employment tribunal at NHS Fife, involving a nurse who was suspended after complaining about a doctor who is a trans woman using the female changing room. Our political correspondent Kirsten Campbell reports.
Employment tribunals don't often hit the headlines, but this one has garnered huge public interest. Sandy Peggy, a nurse at Kirkcaldy's Victoria Hospital, was suspended after complaining about a trans doctor using the female changing room. Dr Beth Upton described the confrontation as quite scary. The case has prompted political questions about how public bodies apply the law. The Health Secretary has faced criticism for not getting involved.
I think the law is clear, the guidance is in place, and it's for public bodies to make sure that they're implemented.
Do you believe that NHS Fife has followed the guidance?
Well, obviously that's the process that the tribunal is underway, and I'm not going to disrespect that process by commenting on it.
The Conservatives believe the SNP's self-ID policy was reckless and have called for more clarity about legal protections.
That's a basic right that women should have, to have a freedom to change in the sanctity of a single-sex space. And what this case has demonstrated is that despite Nicola Sturgeon's gender self-ID law being blocked quite rightly by the UK government, this thinking, this ideology, still infects the public sector in Scotland.
The Labour leader now regrets backing the gender reform legislation without guarantees it wouldn't impact on equality laws.
Let's be really clear, no nurse, whatever the circumstance, should be facing disciplinary action for refusing to share a changing room. We support single-sex spaces and services based on biological sex. That's in the Equality Act, that's the law, and NHS Fife and the Scottish Government should be following the law.
The Greens warn the whole controversy is stoking up a culture war.
The way we tackle gender-based violence, the way we tackle violence against women and girls, the way we tackle abuses that women and trans people face is to make society more equal for everyone, not target and pick and choose whose rights we stand up for.
The tribunal will continue in the summer, and ministers say they'll consider if further action is needed, depending on the outcome. Kirsten Campbell, reporting Scotland, Holyrood.
So just how clear is the law in this area? Well, let's speak to our political correspondent, Phil Sim. Phil, let's just clear this up. What does the law say?
Well, there are a few of them, actually. There is the Workplace Health, Safety and Welfare Regulations 1992, which set out the rules for having separate male and female conveniences. Then there's the 2010 Equality Act, which is one that sets the protections against discrimination for groups on the basis of sex and gender reassignment. That's the law which also provides for single-sex services and spaces, which can exclude trans people. But there is still dispute about things as simple as how that law defines a woman. There's a case up before the Supreme Court about that right now. What's just as important is how the law is put into practice, and that's where guidance like this comes into it. This includes examples like changing rooms and domestic abuse support groups, and it says that organisations have to balance the impact on all service users and show there is a sufficiently good reason and evidence for excluding trans people. But it is ultimately up to groups to make a decision on a case-by-case basis.
OK, so the Health Secretary, Neil Gray, said the guidance is clear. Do public bodies agree?
Well, I mean, a good number of them have run into difficulty around this. You know, the prison service had to change its policy in the middle of a previous row. We've seen the Rape Crisis Network have a centre leave amid a dispute over how they define women-only spaces. We've now had a health board caught up in an ongoing tribunal. And we have previously had Police Scotland criticise a lack of direction from politicians at Holyrood and Westminster about how to interpret the law. You know, at one time it felt like there was a clear direction of travel here, you know, when Nicola Sturgeon's government was pushing through those self-identification reforms, but those never became law, and it feels like John Swinney's government would really rather not talk about this issue at all. But given the political interest there is in it right now, I don't think he's going to have any choice.
OK, Phil Sim at Holyrood, thank you. It's still one of Scotland's most high-profile murder trials. In 2003, Luke Mitchell, then a 14-year-old schoolboy, killed his girlfriend Jodie Jones in a wood in Dalkeith in Midlothian. He was convicted and sentenced to 20 years in prison. Now, 2 decades on, he wants to be considered for release, but a parole board has thus far said no. And today, his legal bid to overturn that decision failed. Maura Kinneborough reports.
Jodie Jones was 14 years old when she was murdered. She'd failed to come home one evening at the end of June 2003. Her body was found in woods near her home in Dalkeith, Midlothian. She'd been repeatedly stabbed. After a long police investigation, her boyfriend Luke Mitchell was charged with her murder. At the High Court in Edinburgh in 2005, he was found guilty and sentenced to life with the recommendation he serve at least 20 years in prison.
Last spring was Mitchell's first chance to be considered for release. He argued that parole board hearing was procedurally unfair. He argued a doctor's report assessing the risk he posed to public safety should have been considered, but was not. Lawyers for the parole board insisted they'd acted lawfully.
Over the 2 decades since he was jailed, Mitchell has lost several appeals.
This lunchtime, Judge Lady Haldane issued her opinion in writing, saying she was going to refuse the petition. She rejected his legal team's argument, stating there was no objective justification for concluding the procedure adopted in this case was unfair.
The court heard there'll be another parole board hearing before April this year. Maura Kinneborough, reporting Scotland, Edinburgh.
Right, let's see what's happening over on the News at 7 on the BBC Scotland channel shortly. Laura McKeever is here. Laura, what are you looking at tonight?
Lots coming up. The environment, one of them, because the First Minister admitted today that not enough has been done in Scotland to tackle climate change. Perhaps conveniently, we're also going to be hearing about plans for new wind farms in Orkney, so connected to that. We're also going to be looking at a major research project following the impact of vaping on young people. It's going to actually follow them for a 10-year period. And also, Curly from Coronation Street will be talking about punk and a new show that's coming to Scotland.
Bit of everything as
Everything
always.
is there. We'll see you at 7 on BBC Scotland.
Good stuff. Thank you, Laura. OK, to some of the day's other stories now. And the rider of a stolen motorbike who fled the scene after striking and killing an elderly man who was crossing the street using a walking frame has been jailed. Stephen Stars admitted causing the death of 81-year-old William Brown in Blackburn and West Lothian last July. The 39-year-old, who's never passed a driving test, was found hiding at a friend's house. Stars was jailed for 7 years and 4 months. 60 firefighters tackled a blaze at a school in Aberdeen overnight. 6 appliances were called to Dice Academy shortly before midnight. A fire on the first floor of the building was extinguished. Aberdeen City Council says the school is closed today, while Police Scotland say inquiries into the cause of it are ongoing. 2 metal detectorists have unearthed a hoard of 15th century coins in the Scottish borders. Keith Young and Lisa Stevenson discovered 30 gold and silver coins in close proximity in the Capper-Cleuch area, which is near St Mary's Loch. The coins are a mix of Scottish and English money. Lisa described the discovery, likely deposited at the site in the early to mid 1460s, as the find of a lifetime. Now, the Scottish Government is looking to buy Ardrossan Harbour from its owner, Peel Ports. A multi-million-pound plan to develop the Ayrshire Harbour has been stalled for more than 7 years, and a standoff over who should pay ensues. Well, our transport correspondent David Henderson is here. David, what impact would this have then?
Well, Ardrossan Harbour is the gateway to Arran. It's a key ferry port linking the island to the mainland, and right now it's not being used by Calmac ferries. The reason why is it needs major renovation work, and the cost of that work, it seems, has ballooned to something around £80 million. And the end result of that is that the owners, Peel Ports, a company, and the Scottish Government can't agree on who's going to pay for all that renovation work. And that standoff has been going on for the best part of 7 years. It looks now as if Scottish Government ministers have simply run out of patience. They want to break the deadlock, they want to buy the site and then develop it.
There are complexities because there's a limit to the amount of funding the Scottish Government can provide as a third party. So I have instructed Transport Scotland and CMAL to engage in discussions with Peel Ports to purchase the harbour for the Scottish Government, and that would enable us to break the logjam and see investment in the harbour.
The priority has to be to get the boats back to Ardrossan. It's whatever everyone we speak to in the local area, that's what we want. It's the shortest, quickest, most efficient sailing. It has been for almost 200 years, and it's only been at Troon since 13th of January, and there's already been a big impact in businesses and communities, economic impact for businesses, lack of footfall.
So what other reaction has there been to this?
Well, after all these years of delay, campaigners both in Arran and Ardrossan are just desperate to get this work done as quickly as possible. And there's concern about whether today's decision by the government to buy it might slow that down rather than speeding it up. And until the repair work is done, of course, it means that Ardrossan can't play host to the new Calmac ferry there, Glen Sannox. It has to sail to Troon instead, miles down the coast, and the end result is it can only make 3 crossings to Arran each day rather than the 5 crossings it would be able to make from Ardrossan. So campaigners warn that until the repair work is done to the harbour, islanders can't make full use of that new ferry.
Yeah, lots of people watching this really closely. OK, thank you, David. Well, it is Wednesday, so that means it is debate night. Here's Stephen Jardine with more details.
Debate night is in Edinburgh tonight for our 150th programme. Our studio audience here will put their questions this evening to Dave Duggan from the SNP, Pam Duncan-Glancy from Scottish Labour, Sue Webber from the Scottish Conservatives, Sandy Begbie from Scottish Financial Enterprise and John Edward from the Scottish Council on Global Affairs. Join me for debate night on the BBC Scotland channel, 9 o'clock.
Now, what do the Batman, the Mandalorian and the City of Dundee all have in common? Well, the answer is virtual production studios. Many films and TV shows now use giant LED screens to film some of their scenes instead of more traditional sets. And now Dundee has its very own version, which it hopes will bring more work to the city. Our science and innovation correspondent Laura Goodwin went to find out more.
So here I am at Joshua Tree National Park in California.
course, I'm not at all. I'm here in Dundee at its brand new virtual production studio, which allows me to transport myself just about anywhere. A rainy London, for example. Now, this is the type of technology using giant LED screens being used now in film and television, replacing traditional sets and green screen. And to tell us more about why this project is so important, I'm joined by Chris van der Kuyl from 4J Studios and Gregor White from Abertay University. Dundee, of course, Chris, is synonymous with games design. How does this add to the city's offering?
Well, video games really powers this technology. The sets that you'd find in California being built by carpenters, they're built here in Dundee by video games experts. They're going to produce the backgrounds, the context, and the merging of that technology with brilliant creative arts technology that we have here as well, and creative arts entrepreneurs, is going to give us the opportunity to create content that no one's ever seen before and put into the hands of companies and organisations and individuals who've never had the ability to use it before.
And Gregor, we have seen big productions like Batman and The Mandalorian use this type of technology. Could we see a big-scale production come to Dundee?
I'd like to think so, and certainly productions that have come to Scotland in the past have looked to find this kind of technology. We're hoping that we'll be able to be here to provide it for them.
Thank you both very much indeed. Well, as we heard there, you know, Scotland is already very popular with productions looking to film here. They hope that having this type of technology will bolster that industry. Laura Goodwin, reporting Scotland in Dundee, or is it Edinburgh?
Getting a bit confused there, wasn't she? OK, let's get to tonight's sport now with another Laura. Laura McGee, a lot of Celtic fans still feeling pretty bruised, I imagine, this morning.
Yes, agonising end to their journey
for
Celtic and their fans. It was a difficult watch. Thank you very much, Laura. Good evening, everyone. Heartbreaking pride is how Captain Callum McGregor summed up the end of Celtic's European journey after Bayern Munich scored in injury time to win their Champions League playoff tie 3-2 on aggregate. The Scottish champions put on a fine performance, but the Germans struck with just seconds to play, as Paul Barnes reports.
The final whistle, I think every player on the pitch was heartbroken, and we gave so much to the game. But like you said, when the dust settles, the players can feel really proud of themselves, because that performance against a top club in Europe hasn't been done many times.
That sense of pride shared by Celtic supporters returning home from Munich.
Disappointed, as I say, but we never come away with a victory, but we go home with a smile on our face.
It was a really good game, really good atmosphere. Looking forward to next year.
I think everyone coming off that plane today really are proud of how the players performed for us.
Progress that made me want to come back, and now we've got to finish the season off strong. Got 2 titles to go for. Get into the Champions League next season. Look to build the squad again, and my unswerving plan is to make this a season club at this level, where we can go and really hurt big opponents like Bayern Munich.
The Rangers Chief Executive Patrick Stewart says Rangers' progress to the last 16 of the Europa League is one of the reasons he hasn't sacked their manager Philippe Clement. In an interview on the Ibrox Club's media channel, Stewart was asked why Clement remains in the dugout despite widespread fan anger following their shock Scottish Cup exit to Queen's Park. Stewart says that the result was disastrous, but he's determined to stick to the club's long-term rebuild. The Dundee manager Tony Docherty says he has no concerns about the club's position in the Premiership despite sitting just 1 place above bottom spot. A 2-1 loss to Aberdeen saw the Dens Park side drop to 11th in what is a very congested league table. They head to Dingwall to play Ross County this weekend and will leapfrog the Highlanders if they bring 3 points back to Dundee.
I don't even really look at the league table, to be honest, Tyrone, at the moment. I look at game by game, and the game's Saturday against Ross County. Once we come through that, we'll have a look at the league table. But, the most important time for that is in 7 games' time. And we are kind of masters of our own destiny, if you like. We can do something about that, and it starts on Saturday, and making sure that anything that's gone by, is in the past, and we must look forward and make sure that we're giving ourselves the best opportunity to win football matches.
Rugby and Scotland are finalising their preparations for this weekend's Calcutta Cup clash against arch rivals England, knowing they have to make huge improvements from their defeat to Ireland if they're to return from Twickenham with a victory. Head coach Gregor Townsend has taken his players to Spain for a training camp ahead of Saturday's match. The team will fly to London tomorrow when Townsend will name his team for the Scots' third match of the championship. Glasgow Warriors' Gregor Brown is desperate to play in the famous fixture for the first time.
To be involved would be huge. I think it's a game that kind of everyone looks at. A lot of meaning behind it, but especially to play at Twickenham, such a iconic rugby ground would be unreal, and such a great experience.
In athletics, the middle distance runner Neil Gourley is hoping it's third time lucky when it comes to competing in his home city when Glasgow hosts next year's Commonwealth Games. The 30-year-old set a new British indoor record over 1,000 metres last weekend in Birmingham. And having missed the 2019 European Indoor and last year's World Indoor events at Glasgow's Emirates Arena through illness and injury, Gourley is targeting next summer's Commonwealth Games for medal success.
I think Glasgow do a great job of it. I think it's important that we do to kind of save this Commonwealth Games movement if we want this to continue, and I think we will do a good job of it. As far as the athletics goes, it's personally a really big deal for me. I feel like that's something in my career that I've just been missing, and one that I need to put it that way. So it's third time lucky as far as that goes.
And homegrown talent at the Commonwealth Games is what we want to see. So fingers crossed he makes it.
Absolutely. It'll be here before we know it, won't
Indeed,
it?
It will. Yeah.
Thank you, Laura. Thanks. Chris, weather, how's it looking?
Well, it's turning much milder, but also much wetter.
Still snow there.
Still snow, but this is the last day of it for a good few days because, as I say, turning much milder, but also much wetter and much windier as well, Laura. Thanks very much indeed. Good evening to you. Yes, we've had quite a cloudy, cold picture once again across much of the country today, but there are changes afoot. Through the course of this evening, we're expecting some heavy rain to move from the southwest towards the northeast, and the winds will be ramping up, particularly around the coast, strong to gale force in places, and temperatures overnight 3 to 6 Celsius, but they're actually climbing, so by the end of the night, into double digits, a sign of things to come. Here's what's happening tomorrow. Low pressure ruling the roost out towards our west, sending weather fronts and rain our way, and in the process scooping up some really very mild air indeed. So initially dry, but then soon turning wet with heavy rain pushing its way eastwards. The odd rumble of thunder in the mix at times too, and windy with it as well around the coast, strong to gale force gusts. Now, mid-afternoon, there are signs of a drier slot of weather, a window of opportunity, a bit of sunshine, but it's the temperature you'll notice. Bear in mind, most of this month so far has been around 4 to 6 Celsius as the afternoon high. Tomorrow, 11 to 13. There's still some heavy downpours to be had as well, certainly around the west coast, and those winds are once again strong to gale force across Orkney and Shetland. Tomorrow evening, further frequent heavy downpours crossing the country. And then on Friday, we do it all again, another weather system bringing some heavy rain and high winds. In fact, we have Met Office yellow warnings in force for Friday. In the southwest, some high winds, so a Met Office yellow warning across Dumfries and Galloway, some big waves around the coast, and then also yellow warnings for heavy rain through parts of the southwest and towards Angus, Aberdeenshire and Perthshire as well. The potential for some localised flooding with that heavy rain, but you can see it's wet almost anywhere, so really poor conditions on the roads with surface water and spray, big puddles. Once again, very windy. Once again, very mild. We could see 14 degrees on the Murray coast, but it's wet. And then to the weekend, tale of two halves. Saturday, the drier, brighter of the 2 days, some sunshine, still mild. And then on Sunday, the rain returns and once again windy. Severe gales in the Northern Isles. That's the forecast for now.
Thank you, Christopher. And that is Reporting Scotland for now. The late news is at 10:30 tonight. Until then, from everyone on the team, enjoy your evening. Good night.